Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to Concord TV's live annual budget presentation. I'm Executive Director Josh Hardy for Concord TV, and I'm surrounded by the Concord TV board, or at least a few of you, both remotely and in person. Maybe just real quick, want to go around and just do introductions. Let's hold off on the Zoom folks for now, but let's start with Michelle. Just a quick, say your name and...
My name is Michelle Gilbert, and I've been on the board 6 years, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Steve Ambra. I'm a board member and delighted to be a board member.
Hi, I'm David Murdow. I've been on the board for several years. I've also been board chair.
I'm Robert Alden, been on the board for about 3 years now.
Okay, now so Mike needs to be able to switch audio, but let's have Melissa introduce herself from Zoom. We'll see how that works.
Melissa, can you hear me when I said that?
A little bit. Hi, I'm Melissa Fisk.
Okay. And I see the silhouette of
Tanya Rochette over there.
That's bizarre. Hi, everybody. I'm Tanya Rochette. I am serving on my third round or tour with Concord TV Board of Directors, and I'm very, very pleased to be returning.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to the rest of our board. Not with us tonight are Clint Cogswell, and we also don't have Dan with us either tonight. But I am going to be presenting this year's preliminary budget, my proposed budget. I'll be looking for the board to vote to approve. Real quick, we always read this at the beginning, that the annual live budget presentation is a requirement of our contract with the City of Concord in Article 2B of our contract. Concord Community TV agrees to provide a budget by May 15th showing the next year's proposed revenues and expenditures, showing current year budget, estimated current year revenues and expenses, and 2 years previous actual expenditures and appropriate explanatory details. This is why I usually have the board read this, not me. It's a lot. But explanatory details shall include the derivative of major revenues and expenditures and explanations of significant year-to-year changes in those numbers. Said budget is to be presented to the public in an open meeting and cablecast on Concord TV, also being live streamed on YouTube, and a notice of which posted on Concord TV's website at least 10 days prior to the meeting. So that's sort of the why and who we have here. So without further ado, Mike, if you would be able to switch us to the first slide. We are going to go through and just basically break this down in 4 slides very quickly. There's a couple questions that I know the board had that I will try to focus and provide some explanations to as I go through this. So Mike, if we're on slide, I can't tell, but I'll assume that you're on. You gave me the thumbs up. Good, thank you, Mike. So we're going to be talking about revenues first. Those who are familiar with Concord TV know that the majority of our funding comes through the cable franchise fees through the City of Concord, which is through Comcast and that franchise agreement. And we are just currently, right now, we are just planning on and talking about the Comcast franchise fees. I have been asked about Atlantic Broadband. That's basically not being put into the budget now because we don't know currently how that's going to factor in. So when you look at the line 4,000 franchise fee, that is what we expect for the Comcast franchise fee. If there is anything in this budget cycle from Atlantic Broadband, that's fantastic, but I'm not building my budget around that because they're still doing a lot of work to even get their operations running from what we understand. Everything else in revenues is very small comparatively. The Comcast grant, line 4104, that the board might be aware and the public should be aware as well, that is specifically for capital equipment purchases. So at the end of the presentation, you'll see that we subtract that from our operational expenditures or operational revenue because I can't use that 52.5 for payroll or anything like that, and we specifically show when we buy equipment that we're using that pool of equipment funding money to do that. So that is an annual $52,500 from Comcast, and we are in, oh man, at this point year 6 or year 7 coming up of that capital equipment grant that we receive. That is all I've got for revenues in terms of anything significantly worth mentioning. There are some increases kind of across the board for our expenses. Let me just double check here. And Mike, if we're on, it should say expenses 1 of 2, because there's 2 slides. Thank you, Mike. That marketing, for instance, we're planning on $1,800. The marketing expenditure really comes from a lot of, we're doing social media, promoting of posts to try to get people to see the work we've been doing or posts that we make about Concord TV. So a lot of that is social media marketing. And just planned on that going up a little bit because it seemed to really work, that it seemed to get more people watching and engaging. The cynical side of a person might say it's a bummer that, that the digital marketing world works like that now. And some of our content does still do very, very, very well without paid promoted posts. But there's some, like when we did the Let's Go series, that was grant funded, and we said we should put some towards marketing to really make sure people see this. So it wasn't for nothing. But Mike, in back, he probably has a clenched fist thinking about Google and Facebook, and because it is an expenditure that's necessary, but I wish we didn't have to. Other big expenses, health insurance, I did budget at $18,000. That's line item 5,200. That is for both our health insurance through Anthem and our Delta Dental insurance. Premiums had gone up a little bit, so I'm planning on that being a little higher. We currently have 3 staff members who are enrolled on that plan. Before I jump around too much, Rob, you had asked an interesting question previously when we were talking about the budget about the Telview line items, the 5092 and the 5098. So I just wanted to just explain that and sort of why those numbers are what they are. Each year we pay for our Telview support $6,050, and that's currently in the 3rd year of a 3-year agreement with Telview. And that they're fantastic support. It's well worth the expense. Then the 40 every year there is a 4,872, and that is for the cloud services provided by Telview. So those are 2 different things from the same company that allows us to be able to do our on-demand server and things like that. So it's worth at least mentioning that the numbers will look a little confusing on your spreadsheet because I had accidentally done a double payment of the $4,872 last year, and I talked to Telview and they said we can either refund or we can just apply it to next year's. We're not changing providers of that for the Telview streaming. So, but it just basically means that there was an extra payment, so that did come out of the books this year, but it means I could put in, we're not spending anything, and I dropped the mic pack. Mike, sorry if that made a weird noise. But anyway, so that was just an issue that I'm glad, Rob, that we were able to mention that, because to the common person just looking at this, that would be confusing. To the common board person, that would look confusing. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's an important one. Dues and subscriptions, the reason we went over budget on that, we just had a lot more things that we had to subscribe to, annual kind of payments and things like that. And someone on the board, it might have been Tanya, someone like that, someone had made suggestions. Well, some of those things could have technically gone into training and education, line 5035. So I just made decisions on how to categorize some of those. And there would be arguments to make that some of those dues and subscriptions could have been categorically put in another line item. But I do have a full list that I can make available at requests, because really there's no secret there, about what we subscribe to, but a lot of it's memberships like the NHCCM, the ACM, Chamber of Commerce membership, In-Town Concord membership, and things like that. Mike, could we, you'd switch back to our camera, thank you, to remind people we were there. So let's move on to expenses, the second expenses slide, Mike, and particularly looking at business insurance, which some of those costs went up last year. The biggest one because we enrolled in a cyber insurance plan, which had been highly recommended. I believe the board had agreed with that. So I'm planning on us renewing the cyber insurance, and I'm predicting just, maybe $800 more this year. But I won't hear from Rally Agency about all of that until probably September. September is when a lot of these renewals come up. Other things that are worth mentioning. The money we spent on storage last year, that storage unit is now gone, so there's no reason for me to plan for that expense. Studio and office supplies, we're holding steady with $1,400 planned. And then I did want to just bring up, it's a great question that's been posed about payroll, which we're definitely coming in under that number. Someone had asked why our payroll's coming in low. We had one of our full-time people switch to part-time. So over kind of the span of kind of half of one fiscal year into this fiscal year, that's played a role in kind of us having a little more flexibility. I'd like us to continue with that flexibility because I could go in the direction of hiring a training coordinator or hiring another staff production person. I want to leave my options open right now because there's different directions we could go. And I think we would be interested in bringing on another part-time person, probably with no benefits, if the right, basically the right position, if we know what we're looking for, the right, and then can put that out there and hire the right person for it. My inclination, my leaning is that we would go towards someone who can do training. And when I say training, I mean classes, workshops, publicly available training, not internal training. So there is that buffer, but I think we'd rather be a little careful, especially if we go over our payroll expenditures and don't have much of a buffer. We have one income revenue resource. You know, we don't have a very diversified funding source pool. So we really have to be careful on the payroll side. So we do come in under that number, but I feel pretty happy with the current staff we have and the work that we're getting accomplished. So someone, I forget who had posed that question, but that's, you know, I had been very aggressive for last year's budget saying, oh, we could $224,000. And that may not have been quite necessary. So that's why this year we're looking at $200,000, which we currently are on pace for when we get to the end of this fiscal year, our payroll expenses will be about $186,000. So based on this year's budget, I do have room to add a part-time role. So we're looking forward to potentially, you know, finding a place to add someone to the team. The challenge is there's not enough of a buffer for full-time and benefits. So it really has to be a right fit for what we're looking for. I always talk way too long during these, but for the common person looking at this, we need to explain certain things to show where the numbers are coming from. So for net revenue, we're showing a loss for this fiscal year because we have not quite gotten the Q4 franchise fees. I will remind the city if that hasn't come in yet, but that's normal this time of year. So we're doing pretty good, on track. We definitely won't be running at a deficit, which is a good thing. And I'm projecting for next year the net revenue of $61,000, of course, minus the $52,500 specifically for equipment purchases, would leave us a buffer of about $8,500 in terms of net revenue after reserves. And that is where we stand with the budget this year. I would say just the biggest, maybe not red flag, but definitely we need to, you know, my job going in the next year to continue to find other revenue sources, to utilize, be creative. We've done a good job the last couple of years of getting grants, both through the Tufts Momentum Fund, through New Hampshire Humanities. We're going to try to keep doing things like that and be creative about how, so that way we're not fully dependent on the franchise fees. But continue to do that, and at this point I'll take questions from the board. Just if you have a question on Zoom, you might just need to like wave or something because Mike will have to unmute you if you have a question to ask. And if you try typing anything in the chat, we won't see you. So Tanya is raising her hand. Mike, if you don't mind, for the broadcast, unmuting her. Mike says he's good. Go ahead, Tanya.
Hi, I have a question, and this is for you, Josh, as the executive director. What can the board and the community do to help support the diversification of revenue funds?
Yeah.
What are some actions or activities that we can do to support Concord TV?
Awesome. So first off, I think grants we've really succeeded. Most of the grants we've applied for, we've succeeded. So if there is anyone who has connections and can point us in the direction of where to apply for certain grants, there might be things that we just haven't heard about. There's things that I've been pursuing over the last year with Jim's help. But I think people at home, if they just consider Concord TV, a lot of people don't realize we are a nonprofit and that we could definitely use financial support from those who can consider us as part of their nonprofit giving. Certainly you could do that this year. June is New Hampshire Gives, and we are participating. We're also helping New Hampshire Gives promote the event itself, but we are also reminding folks that that we are participating and we are looking to raise money for New Hampshire Gives. Also, I've been reaching out to some organizations around Concord in terms of trying to get more sponsors and underwriters of Concord TV in general, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them. But again, if folks in the community are community oriented, can maybe connect us to a business that would be interested in a sponsorship, that goes a long way. Individual donations help us quite a bit too, but just a $500 sponsorship goes a long way. A $250 sponsorship or underwriting goes a long way. So those little things would help us just to be able to show that we have revenue sources in other areas. But yeah, the shameless plug would be, Tanya, that if people are able to, I know everything is getting more expensive, we're dealing with inflation, but as people consider their nonprofit giving, just consider Concord TV. That's what I would say. Because on the front, you know, to people it looks like on the exterior, you know, we have a pretty solid revenue source from the franchise fees, but because there's so much uncertainty with the long-term future of that yeah, we definitely want people to give to the organization if they're able to. So, did that sort of answer the way you were thinking, Tanya? Thank you so much. Great question. Okay. Anything, Melissa, or did that? Yeah.
I think you covered everything.
Okay. Great. Okay. So at this point, I would be looking for the board to make a motion to vote to approve, unless there are any other questions. Rob, was there anything
No,
from your
you
end?
did great answering
Okay.
all of our preliminary questions, so thank
Okay.
you once again.
Great. Awesome. So if
I'll
someone,
motion.
yeah. So the motion, which Melissa, do you recall?
I have it. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
That's okay. I know. Yeah.
So I'll move that the board vote to approve the 2022 to 2023 budget as proposed by the executive director.
I'll second it.
Anybody second it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. David did second it. Yeah.
Oh,
Seconded by David. Yeah. Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did I do that backwards?
No.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, sounds good. Okay, so the motion passes. So this is our budget for the 2022-23 fiscal year. And unless there's any other business that the board would like to bring up, if anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn this budget meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we have adjourned our budget presentation. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.